The morning sun cast long shadows across the red desert of New Busan as Dr. Dae-ho Kim checked his equipment one last time. His survey mission would take him to the far edge of the colony, where strange readings had appeared on their sensors 3 days ago. The colony administrator Jinwoo Park had warned him to be careful, but Dae-ho was used to working alone in dangerous places. New Busan was not an easy world to live on. The air was thin, the ground was mostly rock and sand, and water was precious. But humans had built a good life here over the past 50 years. The colony now had over 10,000 people, farms that grew food in special buildings, and even a small hospital where Dae-ho worked when he was not doing research. Dae-ho drove his rover across the rough ground, following the coordinates on his screen. He was a xenobiologist, which meant he studied alien life forms. At 34 years old, he had spent half his life learning about the strange creatures that lived on worlds like this one. Before that, he had been a military medic, fixing hurt soldiers during the border wars with the Keth Empire. The readings led him to a deep canyon that cut through the desert like a wound in the earth. Dae-ho parked his rover at the edge and looked down. The canyon was maybe 200 meters deep with steep walls of red rock. At the bottom, he could see something that did not belong there. It looked like a small ship, but not human-made. The metal was a strange blue-green color, and it had symbols carved into its sides that hurt his eyes to look at. Smoke was still rising from one end, which meant the crash was recent. Dae-ho put on his climbing gear and started down the canyon wall. The climb took him almost an hour. The rock was loose in many places, and twice he almost fell. But his military training had taught him to be careful and patient. When he finally reached the bottom, he could see that the ship was badly damaged. One whole side was torn open like a can. Dae-ho walked around the ship looking for signs of life. His scanner showed that the air around the ship was safe to breathe, but there were traces of alien chemicals. Then he heard it, a soft sound like crying coming from inside the wreck. He climbed through the hole in the ship's side and found himself in what looked like a small living space. There were strange seats and control panels, all made for beings much taller than humans. But in the corner, hidden behind some fallen metal, was something that made Dae-ho's heart stop. It was a child, but not human. The small being had blue-green skin covered in scales that glowed softly in the dark. 2 large eyes looked up at him, filled with pain and fear. The child was hurt badly. There was purple blood on her clothes, and one of her arms was bent in the wrong way. Dae-ho had seen many wounded people during his time as a medic, but this was different. This was a child alone and dying in a crashed ship. He did not think about what species she was or what problems this might cause. He only thought about saving a life. He carefully lifted the child from the wreckage. She was light, maybe weighing as much as a human child of 6 or 7 years old. Her scales felt warm under his hands, and he could feel her heart beating very fast. She made small sounds of pain as he carried her, but she did not fight him. Getting both of them back up the canyon wall was the hardest thing Dae-ho had ever done. He had to rig a special harness to carry the child on his back while he climbed. Every few meters he had to stop and check that she was still breathing. It took 3 hours, and by the time they reached the top, the sun was setting. Dae-ho drove back to the colony as fast as he could. The child drifted in and out of consciousness during the trip. Sometimes she would look at him with those big eyes, and he would talk to her in a soft voice, telling her that everything would be okay. He did not know if she could understand him, but talking seemed to calm her down. The colony's medical center was small, but it had everything Dae-ho needed. He worked through the night, using his knowledge of alien biology to figure out how to help her. Her blood was different from human blood, but it carried oxygen the same way. Her bones were lighter but stronger than human bones. The broken arm would heal, but it needed to be set carefully. The hardest part was not knowing what medicines would help her and what might hurt her. Dae-ho had to run dozens of tests, checking how her body reacted to different treatments. Slowly, very slowly, she began to get better. By morning, the child was stable. She was awake and watching him with curious eyes. Dae-ho sat down next to her bed and tried to think of what to do next. That was when Jinwoo Park arrived with 2 security guards. "Dae-ho, what have you done?" Jinwoo asked, looking at the alien child. "Do you know what this is?" "She's a child who needed help," Dae-ho said. "That's all that matters." "This is a Villani," Jinwoo said, his voice full of worry. "Look at the scale patterns, the bone structure. The Villani are warriors, Dae-ho. They don't form alliances with anyone. If they find out we have one of their children, she was abandoned, Daeho said, left to die in a crashed ship. What kind of people abandon their own children? Jinwoo shook his head. You don't understand the Vellani. They have strict rules about honor and strength. If a child is born weak or different, they cast them out. It's their way. Daeho looked at the small girl lying in the hospital bed. She was watching them talk, and he could see intelligence in her eyes. Whatever the Vellani thought was wrong with her, he could not see it. She seemed perfect to him. What's your name? He asked her in simple words, speaking slowly. The child looked confused for a moment. Then she made some sounds that might have been words in her own language. But when Daeho pointed to himself and said, Daeho, she seemed to understand. She pointed to herself and made a sound like Kesva. Her name is Kesva, Daeho told Jinwoo, but that's too hard for us to say. I think I'll call her So Young. You can't name her, Jinwoo said. We need to contact the Vellani government and return her to her people. Her people left her to die, Daeho said, his voice getting harder. If we send her back, they might abandon her again. Or worse, the argument went on for hours. Other colony leaders came and went, all with different ideas about what to do. Some wanted to send So Young away immediately. Others thought they should study her to learn about Vellani biology. A few, like the teacher Hyun-Soo Lee, thought they should take care of her like any other child. During all this talking, So Young lay in her bed and watched. She was learning to understand some human words, and Daeho could see that she was smart. When people spoke in angry voices, she would look scared. When they spoke kindly, she would relax. Finally, the colony leader Mi Ran-cho made a decision. We will keep the child for now, she said. But Daeho, you found her, so you are responsible for her. If the Vellani come looking for her, it will be your problem to solve. Daeho agreed immediately. He had already decided that he would not let anyone hurt So Young. Over the next few weeks, he spent all his free time with her. He taught her to speak human languages, and she learned faster than any child he had ever seen. So Young was different from human children in many ways. Her scales changed color when she was happy or sad. She could see in the dark better than humans. And sometimes, when she was very calm, Daeho felt like she could sense what he was feeling. But in the most important ways, she was just like any other child. She laughed when he told her funny stories. She cried when she was hurt or scared. She loved to learn new things and ask questions about everything around her. 3 months after he found her, Daeho made it official. He adopted So Young as his daughter, signing all the papers that made her a citizen of New Busan Colony. Jinwoo Park tried to warn him again about the dangers, but Daeho did not care. She's my daughter now, he said, and I will protect her no matter what comes. 8 years had passed since Daeho found So Young in the desert. The small alien child had grown into a bright 12-year-old who spoke Korean and English better than many adult humans. Her blue-green scales had darkened with age, and she was taller now, but she was still small compared to other children her age. So Young went to school every day with the human children of New Busan Colony. At first, some parents had worried about their kids being in class with an alien, but So Young was so kind and helpful that those fears quickly disappeared. She was one of the best students in her grade, especially good at subjects that required understanding how people felt. Her teacher, Hyun-Soo Lee, often watched So Young during class and wondered about her special abilities. The girl seemed to know when other children were sad or angry before they showed it. When fights started in the playground, So Young could calm everyone down just by talking to them. It was like she could feel what others were feeling. She has a gift, Hyun-Soo told Daeho during a parent meeting. I've never seen a child who understands emotions the way she does. Yesterday, little Minho was crying because he lost his lunch money. Before I could even ask what was wrong, So Young was already comforting him. Daeho smiled with pride. She's always been good at helping people feel better. Even when she was small and barely spoke our language, she seemed to know when I was having a bad day. At home, So Young was a normal daughter in most ways. She did her homework at the kitchen table while Daeho cooked dinner. She complained about cleaning her room and asked for later bedtimes. She loved watching human movies and reading books about adventure and friendship. But sometimes Daeho saw signs of her alien heritage. Her scales would glow brighter when she was excited or scared. She could see in complete darkness, which made her useful during power outages, and her empathic abilities kept growing stronger. The colony leader Miran Cho had become like an aunt to So Young over the years. She often stopped by their house for dinner and to hear about So Young's day at school. Miran had never married or had children of her own, so she enjoyed being part of So Young's life. "You've done something amazing, Daeho," Miran said one evening as they watched So Young help some younger children with their homework. "Look how well she fits in here. She's more human than some humans I know." "She is human," Daeho said firmly. "Being born Villani doesn't change that. This is her home, these are her people. I'm her father." But even as he said it, Daeho sometimes worried about So Young's future. She was growing up and soon she would have questions about where she came from. Sometimes he caught her looking at the stars and wondered if she was thinking about her birth people. So Young had learned some things about the Villani from school and computer files. She knew they were warriors who valued strength above all else. She knew they lived far away in a different part of the galaxy, but she had never asked Daeho why her birth parents had left her to die. "Do you think they ever wonder about me?" she asked him one night as he tucked her into bed. "Who?" Daeho asked, though he knew what she meant. "My birth parents. The Villani who made me." So Young's scales dimmed as she spoke. "Do you think they're sorry they left me?" Daeho sat on the edge of her bed and chose his words carefully. "I don't know what they think, So Young, but I know that their loss was my greatest gift. If they hadn't left you, I never would have found you. And you are the best thing that ever happened to me." So Young smiled and hugged him. "You're the best dad in the whole galaxy," she said. These quiet moments were precious to Daeho. But lately, there had been signs that their peaceful life might not last forever. The colony's long-range sensors had detected ships at the edge of their solar system. The ships were too far away to identify, but they were big and moving in formation like a military fleet. Jinwoo Park had called several meetings about the unknown ships. Some people thought they might be traders or explorers. Others worried they could be pirates or invaders. But a few people, including the scientist Yujin Nam, had a different theory. "The ship designs match what we know about Villani technology," Yujin told the Colony Council. "If these are Villani ships, they might be here looking for something. Or someone." When Daeho heard this, his blood went cold. He had always known this day might come, but he had hoped it would be much later. So Young was still just a child. She needed more time to grow up, to become strong enough to face whatever her birth people might want from her. The defense commander, Tae Min Song, started preparing the colony's defenses, just in case. New Busan had shields and some weapons, but they were meant to protect against pirates or wild animals. Against a real military force, they would not last long. "How much do we really know about the Villani?" Miran asked during one of the emergency meetings. Yujin pulled up files on her computer. "Not much. They're warriors, that much is clear. They have a strict society based on honor and combat ability. They don't trade with other species, and they don't form alliances. Most of what we know comes from battles with them during the expansion wars, and that was 50 years ago." "What about their family structure?" Hyunsoo asked. "How do they treat their children?" Yujin looked uncomfortable. "From what we can tell, Villani children are tested for warrior abilities at birth. Those who pass become part of society. Those who fail," she paused. "They are abandoned, left to die." The room went quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. So Young had been one of those abandoned children. "We need to tell her," Miran said quietly. "If the Villani are coming, So Young has a right to know what that might mean." Daeho shook his head. "She's just a child. She doesn't need to carry this burden." "She's not just any child," Taemin said. "She's Villani. If they're here for her, hiding the truth won't protect her." That night, Daeho sat with So Young on their back porch, looking up at the stars. The 2 moons of New Busan cast silver light across the desert and the air was cool and clean. "Dad," So Young said suddenly, "are those ships coming here because of me?" Daeho was surprised. He had not told her about the ships, but somehow she knew. "What makes you think that?" "I can feel it," she said. "Everyone in the colony is scared, but they're not scared of pirates or traders. They're scared of something else. Something about me." Daeho put his arm around her shoulders. "So Young, there are some things about your past that I haven't told you. I was waiting until you were older." "I know my birth parents abandoned me," she said quietly. "I've known for a long time. I can feel it when people think about sad things. And when they look at me, sometimes they think about parents who don't want their children." "You're growing up too fast," Daeho said with a sad smile. Yes, the ships might be Villani. And yes, they might be here because of you. But I want you to remember something important. No matter what happens, you are my daughter. This is your home. These people love you. So Young leaned against him. I know, Dad, but what if they want me to go with them? Then we'll face that together, Daeho said. I won't let anyone take you away from me. Not without a fight. The next morning brought news that changed everything. The ships were definitely Villani, and they were definitely coming to New Busan. But they were not just any Villani ships. According to Yujin's analysis, the largest ship carried the markings of the Supreme Matriarch herself. This is not a random patrol, Yujin explained to the emergency council meeting. The Supreme Matriarch is the most powerful person in all of Villani space. She doesn't travel anywhere without a very important reason. Daeho felt sick to his stomach. How long until they arrive? 3 days, maybe 4, Taemin said. I've sent messages to the nearest human military bases, but they're too far away to help us in time. So Young spent the next few days going to school as normal, but Daeho could see the worry in her eyes. Her scales stayed dim and she was quieter than usual. The other children seemed to sense that something was wrong, and they stayed close to her like they were trying to protect her. On the 3rd day, the Villani fleet arrived. The ships were massive, black as space itself and covered in spikes and weapon ports. They moved into orbit around New Busan like sleeping giants, casting shadows on the colony below. The largest ship was the size of a small city, and from its hull came a message in perfect human English. People of New Busan Colony, the voice said. It was female, strong, and commanding. I am Kilara Velthani, Supreme Matriarch of the Villani Hegemony. I have come to reclaim what is mine. Send me the child you call So Young and no harm will come to your settlement. Daeho listened to the message from the colony's command center, his hands clenched into fists. Next to him, So Young stood very still, her scales flickering between different colors. She wants me, So Young said quietly. She can't have you, Daeho said. But as he looked up at the huge ships blocking out the sky, Daeho wondered if he would be strong enough to keep that promise. The Villani flagship cast a shadow over the capital city of New Seoul like a metal storm cloud. From the colony's command center, Daeho watched as smaller ships detached from the main vessel and began landing in the open areas around the city. The ships were graceful despite their size, moving with the kind of precision that came from advanced technology and military training. Kilara Velthani had not waited for an answer to her demand. She was coming to take what she called hers, whether the humans agreed or not. We need to evacuate So Young, Jin Woo Park said, his voice tight with worry. Get her to one of the outer settlements where they can't find her. No, So Young said firmly. She had been quiet since the message, but now she stepped forward. Running away won't solve anything. If she really is my birth mother, then she'll keep looking until she finds me. And she might hurt people while she's doing it. Daeho looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and fear. At 12 years old, she was already thinking like an adult. But she was still a child, and the idea of her facing the most powerful Villani in the galaxy made his heart ache. You don't have to do this, So Young, he said. Let me handle this. We'll handle it together, she said, taking his hand. That's what families do. Through the command center's windows, they could see Villani soldiers forming ranks in the city square. They were tall, much taller than humans, with the same blue-green scales as So Young, but darker and more armored-looking. Each one carried weapons that hummed with energy, and they moved with the fluid grace of born warriors. In the center of the formation stood a figure that could only be the Supreme Matriarch. Kilara Velthani was massive even by Villani standards, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in scales that looked like they were made of polished metal. Her armor was decorated with symbols that hurt human eyes to look at directly, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never been defeated. She's coming to the command center, Min Song reported, watching his security screens. No weapons drawn, but her soldiers are staying in formation around the building. Miran Cho straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. Then we'll meet her at the front door. Daeho, So Young, stay behind me until we know what she wants. But Kilara did not come to the front door. She came to the roof. The sound of landing thrusters made everyone look up as a small Villani transport settled on top of the command center. Heavy footsteps echoed through the building as the matriarch made her way down the stairs, her soldiers clearing the path ahead of her. When she entered the main room, everything went quiet. Killer of Velthani was even more impressive up close. Her eyes glowed with an inner light, and when she moved, her scales caught the light like living metal. She looked around the room, studying each human face with the intensity of a predator. Then her gaze fell on So Young, and everything changed. The matriarch's fierce expression softened just for a moment. Her glowing eyes widened, and she took a step forward before stopping herself. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been in her message. "Kesva," she said, using So Young's birth name. "My daughter." So Young looked up at the towering figure of her birth mother and felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her had always wondered what her Vellani parents looked like. Now she knew, but instead of joy, she felt mostly confusion and a little bit of anger. "You left me to die," So Young said in a clear voice. "Why are you here now?" Kilara flinched as if So Young had hit her. Several of the Vellani soldiers shifted uncomfortably, not used to seeing their supreme matriarch show weakness. "You were born without the warrior's strength," Kilara said, her words careful and formal. "By our laws, you could not be raised as Vellani. I believed you would die quickly and without pain. Instead, she lived," Deho said, stepping forward to stand next to So Young. "She grew up strong and happy and loved. No thanks to you." Kilara's glowing eyes fixed on Deho, and for a moment he thought she might attack him, but instead she studied him with the same intensity she had shown So Young. "You are the one who found her," she said. "It was not a question. I'm the one who saved her," Deho replied. "And I'm her father now." "You are human," Kilara said, as if this explained everything. "Humans are weak, soft. How could you raise a Vellani child?" "By loving her," Deho said simply. "By teaching her to be kind and smart and brave. By being there when she needed me." The matriarch walked around Deho like she was examining a strange animal. "You have no warrior's training. No battle scars. No honor marks. Yet you claim to have raised my daughter?" "I don't claim it," Deho said. "I did it. For 8 years I've been her father. I've taught her to read and write. I've comforted her when she had nightmares. I've celebrated her successes and helped her through her failures. That's what being a parent means." Kilara stopped in front of him. This close, Deho could smell something like metal and ozone coming from her scales. "Show me," she said. "What?" "Show me how you raised her. I will observe for myself what kind of warrior you have made of my daughter." Miran stepped forward. "With respect, matriarch, this is highly unusual. We need to discuss terms, establish protocols." "I am not here to negotiate with you, human leader," Kilara said without looking away from Deho. "I am here to see what has become of my blood, and to understand how a weak species could succeed where I failed." Over the next several days, something extraordinary happened. Kilara Velthani, supreme matriarch of a warrior empire, became a silent observer of human family life. She followed Deho and So Young everywhere. When they went home for dinner, she stood in their kitchen and watched Deho cook while So Young did homework. When So Young went to school, the matriarch observed from the back of the classroom as Hyun-Soo Lee taught lessons about history and science. At first, the matriarch's presence made everyone nervous. Her soldiers stood guard outside wherever she went, and her armor and weapons were constant reminders of the power she commanded. But as the days passed, something strange began to happen. Kilara started asking questions. Why do you help her with learning tasks she should master alone? She asked Deho one evening as he helped So Young with a difficult math problem. Because learning is easier when someone helps you, Deho explained, and because I want her to succeed. But if she cannot solve problems alone, how will she survive in battle? She doesn't need to survive in battle, Deho said. She needs to survive in life. And life is not a battle. It's about working together, helping each other, building something better. The matriarch watched as So Young figured out the math problem and smiled with pride. Among my people, children learn by competing with each other. The strongest survive. The weak are cast out. And how's that working for you? So Young asked suddenly, looking up from her homework. Kilara blinked in surprise. What do you mean, child? Well, you came all this way to find me, So Young said. One of the weak ones you cast out. That means you need something you don't have, something the strong ones can't give you. The room went very quiet. Deho held his breath, wondering if So Young had gone too far. But Kilara did not get angry. Instead, she looked thoughtful. You are observant, the matriarch said finally. The truth came out slowly over the following days. Kilara had not come to New Busan just to reclaim her daughter. She had come because the Vellani Empire was in trouble. "We are at war," she told Daeho and Miran during a private meeting. "Not with another species, but with ourselves. A faction of our own people has risen against the traditional ways. They use new weapons, new tactics. They attack our minds instead of our bodies. Psychological warfare," Yujin Nam said, understanding immediately. "They're using fear and confusion instead of direct combat. Our warriors are trained to fight with honor," Kilara said, her voice heavy with frustration. "They do not know how to defend against enemies who attack from within, who turn our own people against us. Traditional strength means nothing against this new threat." "And you think So Young can help because of her empathic abilities?" Daeho said. Kilara nodded. "I have watched her these past days. She calms anger, soothes fear, brings peace where there was conflict. This is not weakness as I once believed. This is a different kind of strength." "But you still want to take her away from here," Daeho said. "Away from her home and family?" The matriarch was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "I have observed much since I arrived here," she said. "I have seen how you care for my daughter, how she trusts you, how she has grown strong in ways I never imagined possible." She paused. "I have also seen how you look at her. The love in your eyes, it is not what I expected from a human." "What did you expect?" Daeho asked. "I expected you to use her, to study her like a specimen or train her as a weapon. That is what Vellani would do with a child of another species." Kilara's scales dimmed slightly. "Instead, you simply loved her. You made her happy. You gave her a family." "She gave me a family too," Daeho said. "Before So Young, I was alone. She saved me as much as I saved her." That night, as Daeho tucked So Young into bed, she asked him the question he had been dreading. "Dad, what happens now? Is she going to take me away?" Daeho sat on the edge of her bed and brushed a strand of dark hair from her forehead. "I don't know, sweetheart." The morning of the 7th day brought an announcement that shocked everyone in New Busan colony. Kilara Velthani, Supreme Matriarch of the Vellani hegemony, requested a formal gathering of all colony leaders and citizens. She had something important to declare. The entire population gathered in the main square, with Vellani soldiers standing at attention around the edges. The contrast was striking. Thousands of humans in simple clothes and work uniforms, surrounded by towering alien warriors in gleaming armor. At the center of it all stood Kilara, magnificent and terrible in her formal robes of state. Daeho and So Young stood with the other colony leaders, but Daeho kept one hand on his daughter's shoulder. He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing through all the possible things the matriarch might say. None of his imagined scenarios had prepared him for what actually happened. "People of New Busan," Kilara began, her voice carrying easily across the square, "I came here to reclaim my daughter, who was lost to me many years ago. I have found her, and I have observed how she has grown under your care." The crowd was perfectly silent, waiting to hear their fate. "I have also observed the male who raised her," Kilara continued, her glowing eyes finding Daeho in the crowd. "Daeho Kim, step forward." Daeho felt So Young's hand squeeze his as he walked to the center of the square. Standing next to Kilara, he felt like a child next to a giant, but he kept his head up and met her gaze steadily. "Daeho Kim," Kilara said formally, "you have done something that my people believed impossible. You have taken a Vellani child, one marked as weak and worthless, and you have made her strong. Not strong in body, but strong in spirit, strong in wisdom, strong in the ability to heal rather than harm." The matriarch began to pace around Daeho, her footsteps echoing in the silent square. "In Vellani culture, strength is earned through combat. Honor is won through victory, but you have shown me a different kind of strength. The strength to love without expecting anything in return. The strength to build rather than destroy." She stopped in front of him again. "You have proven yourself a warrior in ways my people do not understand. You fought to save my daughter's life when you could have left her to die. You fought to give her a home when you could have sent her away. You fought to protect her happiness when you could have used her for your own purposes." Daeho frowned, not understanding where this was leading. "I just did what any decent person would do." "Exactly," Kilara said. "And that is why I am making this declaration before all assembled here." She raised her voice so that everyone could hear. "By the ancient laws of the Vellani, by the right of combat and the right of choice, I claim Daeho Kim as my mate." The words hit the square like a thunderbolt. Humans gasped and murmured in shock. Even the Villani soldiers looked surprised. Deho himself stood frozen, not sure he had heard correctly. "What?" he finally managed to say. "You have proven yourself worthy," Killara said. "You have shown strength, honor, and wisdom. You have successfully raised my daughter when I could not. By Villani law, this makes you a suitable partner for a matriarch." "But I'm human," Deho protested, "and I didn't agree to this." "Your species is irrelevant," Killara said dismissively. "As for agreement, you will come to understand the honor I'm offering you. No human has ever been claimed by Villani nobility." Mirancho stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Matriarch, with respect, our laws don't recognize forced marriage. Deho has the right to refuse." Killara's eyes flashed with anger. "You dare to refuse a direct offer from the Supreme Matriarch?" "I'm not refusing because of who you are," Deho said quickly, trying to prevent a diplomatic disaster. "I'm confused because I don't understand what this means. What exactly are you asking?" The matriarch seemed to calm down slightly. "I am asking you to be my partner, to come with me to Villani space and help end our civil war, to use your wisdom and my daughter's abilities to bring peace to my people. And if I say no, then you would be foolish beyond measure," Killara said. "But I would not force you. However, I would still need to take my daughter back to help with the war." The crowd erupted in angry voices as people realized what was happening. The matriarch was offering Deho an impossible choice: accept her claim and leave his home forever, or refuse and lose So Young anyway. "This is emotional blackmail," Jinwoo Park shouted over the noise. "This is politics," Killara replied coldly. "My people are dying while we speak. I need every advantage I can get, including my daughter's unique abilities." "She's just a child," Deho said. "You can't use her as a weapon." "I am not asking her to fight," Killara said. "I am asking her to heal, to bring peace where there is conflict, to do what she has always done but on a larger scale." So Young had been quiet during all of this, but now she stepped forward. Her young face was serious and her scales were glowing with determination. "Stop," she said, her voice cutting through the arguments. "Everyone stop talking about me like I'm not here." The square went quiet again. So Young looked around at all the adults, human and Villani alike, and then walked to stand between Deho and Killara. "You want me to help end a war," she said to Killara, "and you want my dad to be your mate so he can help too." "That is correct," the matriarch said. "And if Dad says no, you'll take me anyway." Killara hesitated. Yes, I need your help, child." So Young nodded slowly. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She reached out and took both Deho's hand and Killara's massive clawed hand in her own small ones. "I can feel what you're both feeling," she said. "Dad, you're scared of losing me, but you're also curious about what this could mean. And Killara," she looked up at the towering matriarch, "you're not just worried about the war. You're lonely. You've been alone for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to have a family." Killara's scales flickered with surprise. "You can sense this?" "It's what I do," So Young said simply. "I feel what others feel. And right now I feel like both of you care about me. But you're so busy fighting each other that you're not thinking about what I want." "What do you want?" Deho asked gently. So Young was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. "I want to help people. That's what you taught me, Dad. When someone is hurt or scared, we help them. And it sounds like the Villani people are both hurt and scared." "But that doesn't mean you have to leave home," Deho said. "What if we didn't have to choose?" So Young asked. "What if there was a way to help the Villani and still keep our family together?" She looked between the two adults. "Killara, you said Dad proved himself worthy. But worthy of what exactly? Just being your mate or being part of something bigger?" The matriarch frowned. "I do not understand your meaning." "I think she's asking if there's a way to solve this that doesn't require anyone to give up everything they care about," Miran said. Understanding So Young's direction, Yujin Nam stepped forward from the crowd. "Actually, there might be precedents for this kind of arrangement. If we look at historical examples of cross-species cooperation, there are no precedents," Killara said firmly. "Villani do not form alliances with other species." "Maybe it's time to start," So Young said. "You said your traditional ways aren't working against this new enemy. Maybe you need to try something completely different." Deho looked down at his daughter with amazement. At 12 years old, she was thinking like a diplomat and mediator. "What are you suggesting, sweetheart?" "I'm suggesting we make a deal," So Young said. "Not just between Killara and Dad, but between the Villani and humans. A real partnership. She turned to address the crowd. Killara needs help ending a civil war. We have skills they don't have. We're good at understanding emotions, at finding peaceful solutions, at working together. And they have things we could use: advanced technology, protection, knowledge about the galaxy. A formal alliance, Miran said slowly. It could work. Killara looked skeptical. My people would never accept such an arrangement. Vellani do not share power with inferior species. Are we inferior? So Young asked. I mean, really? You came all this way because you needed something your own people couldn't give you. Maybe humans aren't inferior. Maybe we're just different. The Matriarch was quiet for a long time, thinking. Around the square, humans and Vellani watched and waited to see what she would decide. Finally, Killara spoke. You propose that I accept humans as equals, that I share authority with them, that I trust my people's fate to an alien species. I propose that you trust us the same way Dad trusted me, So Young said. When he found me, he didn't see an alien or an enemy. He saw someone who needed help, and look how that turned out. Killara looked down at So Young, then at Daeho, then at the crowd of humans watching her with hope and fear in their eyes. Very well, she said finally. I will consider this proposal. But I require time to think, and I require proof that such an alliance could work. What kind of proof? Daeho asked. The Matriarch smiled, and for the first time it was not a warrior's smile, but something almost warm. I require proof that a human can truly be part of a Vellani family. Daeho Kim, I still claim you as my mate, but now I offer you time to understand what that means. And if I accept, then you and So Young will come with me to Vellani space. You will help end our civil war, and in return, our peoples will forge a new kind of relationship, one based not on conquest but on... The 3 days passed faster than Daeho had ever imagined possible. News of the Matriarch's proposal spread throughout the colony and beyond, reaching human settlements across the sector. Some called it the opportunity of a lifetime. Others called it madness, but everyone agreed that the decision would change everything. Daeho spent those days talking with So Young, with Miran, with anyone who might help him understand what he was being asked to do. The diplomat Yunbi Kang arrived on the second day, having traveled from the sector capital as soon as she heard the news. This could be the most important moment in human history, Yunbi told the emergency council meeting. The Vellani have never offered an alliance with anyone. If this works, it could open up entirely new possibilities for our species. And if it doesn't work, Jinwoo asked, then we lose our best xenobiologist and the most remarkable child our colony has ever produced, Miran said quietly. But it was not the political implications that worried Daeho. It was the personal ones. In 3 days, he would have to choose between his safe, familiar life on New Busan and an unknown future among aliens who might never truly accept him. What does your heart tell you? Hyunsu Lee asked him on the evening of the second day. They were sitting in the school where So Young had learned to be human, watching her help younger children with their reading. My heart tells me to protect her, Daeho said, but I don't know if that means keeping her here or letting her go where she might do the most good. She's not really yours to keep, Hyunsu said gently. She never was. You've been taking care of her for these years, but she's always been her own person. Maybe it's time to let her make her own choices. That night, Daeho and So Young sat in their living room and talked honestly about the future. Are you scared? So Young asked him. Terrified, Daeho admitted. I've never been in space except to travel between colonies. I've never lived among aliens. I don't know if I can be what Killara thinks she wants. What does she think she wants? Daeho smiled sadly. A partner who can help her understand emotions and cooperation instead of just conquest and war. Someone who can teach her people to work together instead of just fighting. You're good at that, So Young said. You taught me. But you're one person and you're my daughter. The Vellani are an entire civilization with millions of people who have been raised to believe in completely different values. So Young curled up next to him on the couch. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I can feel what Killara feels when she looks at you. And it's not just about politics or the war. She really cares about you. I think she's been alone for so long that she forgot what it was like to care about someone. That doesn't mean we're right for each other. Maybe not, So Young said. But maybe it means you could help each other become better people. Isn't that what love is supposed to do? On the morning of the third day, Killara came to their house alone. She had left her soldiers and weapons behind. wearing simple clothes that made her look less like a terrifying warrior and more like a very tall, very unusual person. "I have come for your answer," she said, standing in their kitchen like the most awkward houseguest in the galaxy. "First, I have some questions," Deho said. "If I accept your claim, what does that actually mean? What would you expect from me?" Kilara sat down carefully in a chair that creaked under her weight. "Among my people, mates are partners in all things. They share authority. They make decisions together. They support each other's goals. I would expect you to help me lead my people through this crisis. And after the crisis is over, I would expect you to help me lead them into a new age. One where strength is measured by more than just the ability to fight." Deho nodded slowly. "And what about So Young? What kind of life would she have among the Villani?" "She would be honored as my daughter and heir," Kilara said. "She would learn our ways while keeping the best of what you have taught her. And someday she might rule our people as the first matriarch who understands both war and peace. That's a lot of pressure for a 12-year-old. She will not be 12 forever, and she will not face these responsibilities alone." Kilara looked at both of them. "If you accept my claim, we will face them together, as a family." So Young had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. "What about New Busan? What about our friends here?" Kilara was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about that. Your friend Miran spoke to me about something called cultural exchange. She suggested that cooperation between our peoples could benefit both sides." "What does that mean?" Deho asked. "It means that perhaps this colony could become something new, a place where humans and Villani learn from each other, a bridge between our worlds." Kilara's scales brightened slightly. "If our partnership succeeds, I could establish a permanent embassy here. You could return to visit, and some of your people could come to visit us. You would do that?" So Young asked, her eyes wide with hope. "I am beginning to understand that strength comes from connections, not isolation," Kilara said. "If we are to be family, then our people should learn to be friends." Deho felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "You're talking about more than just ending a civil war. You're talking about changing your entire civilization." "Yes," Kilara said simply, "and I cannot do it alone. I need someone who understands how to build bridges instead of walls. Someone who can teach my people that caring for others is not weakness." "And you think I can do that?" "I have watched you for a week," Kilara said. "I have seen how people respond to you, how they trust you, how they follow your example even when they are afraid. Yes, I think you can do that." So Young looked between them. "Dad, I think we should try." "It's a huge risk," Deho said. "We could fail completely." "We could," So Young agreed. "But we could also succeed in ways nobody has ever imagined. And even if we fail, at least we'll fail trying to do something good." Deho looked at his daughter, wise beyond her years, brave beyond measure, and ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them. Then he looked at Kilara, seeing past her alien features to the loneliness and hope in her eyes. "All right," he said finally, "I accept your claim." The preparations for departure took another week. The diplomatic implications alone required dozens of messages between New Busan, the human sector government, and various Villani authorities. Yun Bikang worked around the clock to establish the legal framework for the first human-Villani alliance in history. Meanwhile, Deho packed up his life on New Busan. Some things would come with him: his medical equipment, his research notes, photos of So Young growing up. Other things would stay behind as reminders of the life he was leaving. The hardest part was saying goodbye to their friends. Miran Cho cried when she hugged So Young goodbye, even though they both knew it was not really goodbye. Jin Woo Park, who had once wanted to send So Young away, now pressed a small tracking device into Deho's hand. "Just in case you need to find your way home," he said gruffly. Hyun-Soo Lee gave So Young a tablet loaded with human literature and history. "Don't forget where you came from," she said. "But don't be afraid to become something new." The Villani ships were even more impressive from the inside than they had been from the outside. Everything was built on a massive scale, with corridors wide enough for 3 humans to walk side by side, and ceilings high enough to make Deho feel tiny. But Kilara had arranged quarters for them that were scaled to human size, complete with familiar furniture, and even some of So Young's favorite foods. The journey to Villani space would take 3 weeks. During that time, Kilara began teaching them about her people's culture, history, and the nature of the civil war they would face. The rebels call themselves the New Path, she explained as they studied tactical displays in her private chambers. They believe that our traditional honor codes make us weak. They use fear and psychological manipulation to turn our own people against us. How? Deho asked. They plant doubts. They whisper that the old ways are failing, that our leaders care nothing for the common people. They turn families against each other, warriors against their commanders. It is a poison that spreads through words rather than weapons. So Young studied the reports with the intensity of someone much older. They're using emotional warfare against people who were never taught to defend against it. Exactly, Killara said. And that is why I need both of you. You understand how emotions work, how to heal instead of harm. You can teach my people to resist this poison, and perhaps even cure it. The first test of their new partnership came sooner than expected. On the 10th day of their journey, they received a distress call from a Vellani colony ship that had been infiltrated by rebel agents. The crew was in chaos, turning against each other as fear and suspicion spread through the ship. We should evacuate the loyalists and destroy the ship, advised Killara's military commander, a scarred veteran named Tethmar. No, Deho said firmly. Let us try something different. With Killara's permission, Deho and So Young transported over to the damaged colony ship. What they found was heartbreaking. Vellani families torn apart by suspicion, children cowering in corners while their parents accused each other of betrayal. But So Young's empathic abilities proved more powerful than anyone had imagined. Moving through the ship like a calming presence, she began.